Welcome to study session 6, Research in Clinical Psychology Introduction. Introduction. Clinical psychology as an applied area of scientific psychology is based on sound scientific tenets and philosophy. Therefore, if one is to advance in the field, and if we are to aspire to sound and orderly progress in the decades to come, comprehensive and sophisticated research is a necessity of the highest priority. In this study, you will learn the descriptive, correlation, and experimental research approach. Learning outcomes. At the end of this study, you should be able to 1. Discuss the descriptive research method used by clinical psychologists. 2. Discuss the correlation research method used by clinical psychologists. 3. Explain the experimental research approach in the process. Descriptive research. Generally, in research, there are 3 important considerations, and these are consensual validation. Others must be able to see what the researcher is seeing. Reliability or replicability. The research must be able to be repeated with similar results. Validity. The research must measure what it intends to measure. The outstanding characteristics of the descriptive research is its focus on phenomena as they are. Descriptive studies usually do not manipulate or control events. Rather, they attempt to define and identify important factors. This type of investigation covers a wide spectrum, from broad surveys to public opinion to behavioral studies of specific hospital, school, or other population. Interviews, questionnaires, and natural environmental observation are commonly used in these studies. Data obtained with these instruments are then translated into the descriptive statistics of frequency counts, averages, and standard deviations. Observational studies make up one class of descriptive research. For example, frequency of conversational interchanges between residents of a hospital ward, an average sleep time of depressed subjects, comparison of years in therapy of depressed versus schizophrenic patients are all subjects of representative of observational research. Correlation research. Correlation research, like descriptive research, does not manipulate the variables that it examines. Rather, this approach takes the description of events or individuals one step further to evaluate relationship between existing variables. Correlation is the analysis of how variables interrelate, associate, and influence each other. What is the relationship between parental divorce and children's aggressive behavior? Is there a correlation between overcrowded living conditions and the incidence of neurotic behavior? Correlation is the analysis of how variables interrelate, associate, and influence each other. These questions typify the correlation approach. It is important to note that correlation indicates nothing about cause and effect. A correlation between parental divorce and children aggression does not mean the divorce caused the aggression, only that they tend to occur together. Experimental research is a process of hypothesis testing in which investigators manipulate variables and make objective observations of the effects of the variables on specified behaviors. A variable is any factor, event, or phenomenon that may assume different values, that is, they may have variable magnitudes. Variables can be environmental factors, heat, light, sound, physiological factors, fatigue, body injury, or psychological factors, attitude, learned behaviors. In experimental research, variables are usually divided into variables that experimenters manipulate, the independent variables, and those they measure or observe, dependent variables. Although many factors may be present in research studies, it is important to recognize that not all of them are experimental variables. The researcher will usually speak of controlling for confounding or extraneous variables. Thus, strict control of environmental variables increases the probability that predictions based on the research findings will prove correct. Summary for study session. In study session 6, you have learned that 1. Descriptive studies usually do not manipulate or control events. Rather, they attempt to define and identify important factors. 2. Correlation research, like descriptive research, does not manipulate the variables that it examines. Correlation is the analysis of how variables interrelate, associate, and influence each other. Experimental research is a process of hypothesis testing in which investigators manipulate variables and make objective observations of the effect of the variables on specified behaviors. We have come to the end of study session 6. Thanks for listening.